The city of Verelia gleamed under a sky of violet clouds streaked with golden light. Towers of crystal rose like jagged mountains, reflecting the sun in brilliant patterns that dazzled any visitor. Among the citizens who moved like rivers through the streets, most wore elegance as naturally as breathing. Wealth and status were the only things that mattered here, and everyone treated Leora, the daughter of the richest family on Verelia, as though she were untouchable. She had lived in luxury all her life, surrounded by people who smiled at her every word, yet never once had she felt their kindness was real. It was always shallow, always expected, always tied to her wealth. Leora had grown tired of it. The flattering words, the rehearsed gestures, the constant deference, it all felt like a cage. She wanted something different, something real, something that was not bought or commanded. And so, in the quiet of her private chambers, she devised a plan. She took garments from the oldest trunk in her room, faded cloth, patched in several places, worn thin by time. She covered her glowing alien features with a hooded cloak that muted her aura, hiding the light that normally announced her presence from a mile away. Her sharp eyes, normally a vivid silver, were dimmed behind a mask of soot and fabric. When she looked into the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. She looked ordinary, human even, or perhaps less than ordinary, like one of the citizens who struggled daily without privilege, and for the first time that brought her a strange kind of thrill. When she stepped out into the streets, the world greeted her in a way it never had before. Merchants ignored her, brushing past as if she were invisible. Children threw stones at her cloak, laughing when it caught on jagged corners of the buildings. Guards gave her hard looks, their hands resting on weapons they would have drawn if she tried to cause trouble. Leora felt a sting in her chest. She had never known this kind of treatment. In her world, anyone could command respect simply by saying a few words. Here she had nothing but herself. She walked past markets filled with strange foods and glowing devices, past fountains that shimmered with liquid light. People bustled around her, arguing, bartering, laughing, crying. And in the midst of it all, she saw cruelty as clearly as she saw the towering spires above. A merchant shoved a beggar away without a word. A child was scolded harshly by a passerby for accidentally spilling a drink. Everywhere she looked, she saw survival as a harsh game, and most of the citizens played it selfishly. Her heart sank. Perhaps kindness was a myth. Perhaps all living beings were the same, self-interested, blind to suffering, unwilling to care without reward. She walked farther, slipping down alleys that smelled of smoke and damp stone, wondering if her experiment had been a mistake. Then she saw him, Ethan. He was unlike anyone she had ever noticed in Verelia. A human, pale-skinned and smaller than the average alien, with hair dark and unkempt, walking through the busy streets with calm certainty. He carried a satchel slung over one shoulder, and his eyes moved constantly, alert but soft. When he noticed her, he did not look at her as a beggar, nor as a curiosity. He simply noticed her, as though she were just another person in need of help. "Are you all right?" he asked, approaching her gently. "You look cold. Here, take this." He offered her a piece of bread from his satchel. Leora hesitated, unused to receiving something without strings attached. "Why?" she asked, her voice low and hoarse from hiding. "Because you need it," Ethan said simply. "No one should go hungry if I can help it." Leora blinked. In Verelia, such words would have been met with suspicion or dismissal. Here they carried warmth. She accepted the bread, feeling a strange flutter in her chest she could not name. They walked together through the crowded streets. Ethan guided her away from dangerous corners, past gangs of rough youths who might have mugged her without a second thought. He ignored the stares of passers-by and the sneers of merchants. For him, she was neither rich nor poor, neither powerful nor weak. She was just a being in need, and he helped her. She watched him as he helped an elderly alien struggling with a cart full of heavy crates. He smiled, joked, and made sure the alien was safe before moving on. Then he stopped at a fountain and offered water to a child whose shoes were worn through. Leora had never seen such acts before. In her world, children of the poor were ignored, punished even for accidents or misfortune. Yet here, this human gave freely without hesitation. Curiosity grew into fascination. Leora began following him from a distance at first, hiding behind crates and market stalls. She learned his routines, the quiet ways he observed the world. the small but constant acts of care he performed for strangers. She saw how he did not boast of his deeds. He did not expect recognition. He did not ask for payment. He simply acted. At night, she returned to her chambers, hiding her cloak and cleaning the soot from her face. She felt a strange emptiness, one she had never known even with all her wealth. She realized that the world she had known, filled with luxury and status, had never shown her this kind of feeling. And yet, seeing Ethan, she had glimpsed it, a world where actions mattered more than titles, where a small gesture could be worth more than a palace. The next day, she ventured further into the city's poorer districts, following Ethan closely. She saw him confront a corrupt merchant trying to cheat a family out of their meager earnings. He stood firm, using calm words and reason to protect the weak. Leora felt admiration and awe, but also a pang of fear. What if she revealed herself too soon? What if her wealth and status ruined the honesty she had been seeking? Days turned into a week. Leora experienced hunger, cold, and discomfort. She felt what it meant to be ignored, pushed aside, and underestimated. She learned the struggles of survival, of walking the streets when no one offered help or even a glance. And all the while, Ethan continued to appear at the right moments, offering food, guidance, or protection, never judging, never questioning her motives. One afternoon, a rainstorm hit the city with sudden fury. The violet clouds darkened, lightning flashed across the skyline, and the streets turned into rivers of mud. Leora shivered, soaked through, unable to find shelter. She tried to cover herself with her thin cloak, but the rain was relentless. Then Ethan appeared, umbrella in hand, holding it over her head. "Come on," he said. "You shouldn't be out in this alone." They ran through the muddy streets, and she felt a strange sense of safety she had never felt before. Not from wealth, not from guards or barriers, but from a simple human act of concern. When they reached a dry alley, he handed her a warm drink. She sipped, trembling, feeling the heat spread through her body and something deeper stir in her heart. For the first time, Leora wondered if she could trust another being completely. Could she let herself believe in kindness that had nothing to do with status, power, or wealth? Watching Ethan, she wanted to. And she realized something she had never considered. Perhaps humans, fragile and small compared to her kind, had a strength that came not from might or control but from heart. That night, she returned to her family's mansion. Exhausted but exhilarated, she sat by the window looking out at the city she had walked, the people she had observed, and Ethan, whom she could not stop thinking about. She understood now that her experiment was only beginning. She wanted to know if his kindness would hold when tested. She wanted to see if it was truly genuine, but more than that, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. A hope that maybe in all this crowded, indifferent world, there was a connection waiting to be found. A hope that someone could see her, not as a wealthy alien girl, not as a being of status, but as a person. And for the first time in her life, Leora allowed herself to imagine that such a person had already appeared, walking beside her in the crowded streets of Virelia. And so, as the golden lights of the city reflected on her window, Leora resolved to continue her journey, to see the world as it truly was, to test kindness and courage, and to find the heart that could match hers. Little did she know, this human would change not only her understanding of kindness, but also the future of two worlds that had never truly met before. The rain had passed, leaving the streets glistening like polished glass. Leora knew one thing for certain. She had found someone extraordinary, and the question she now carried in her heart was whether she could ever show him the truth about herself, and what the consequences might be if she did. The next morning, the city of Virelia awoke under a pale lavender sky, soft light spilling over the crystal towers and reflecting in the puddles from last night's rain. Leora, still disguised in her cloak, stepped out once again into the streets, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the human who had shown her such genuine kindness. Ethan. Even in her disguise, even while hiding her radiant features, she felt a strange connection forming, a curiosity that went beyond mere observation. Today, she resolved to see more, to explore the deeper parts of the city she had avoided before. The alleys here were narrower, darker, and lined with the worn-out homes of those who had nothing. The air smelled of smoke and damp stone, mixed with the aroma of street food cooking over open fires. She walked carefully, watching, learning, and bracing herself for the hostility that life in this district often brought. It didn't take long for trouble to appear. A group of alien youths, rough and sharp-eyed, spotted her wandering alone. One of them stepped forward, knocking her cloak to the side and exposing her tattered clothes. "What's this?" he sneered. "Lost little beggar?" His companions laughed, circling her like predators. Leora froze, unsure of what to do. She was not weak, but she was unarmed, and any display of her true abilities would give her away. Before she could react, Ethan appeared from around a corner, moving quickly but calmly. "Leave her alone," he said, his voice firm. The youths paused, sizing him up. They had never seen a human here, and his presence was unexpected. "Why?" one of them asked. "She's just a beggar. Let her be." "Because it's the right thing to do," Ethan replied, his eyes steady. There was no threat in his stance, but there was strength in his words. A confidence that came not from power or status, but from certainty in what was right. The youths laughed at first, but something in his tone made them hesitate. Slowly, they backed away, grumbling and muttering under their breaths. Leora's heart pounded, a mix of fear and admiration. She realized that Ethan's courage was different from her world's standards. It was quiet, unshowy, and based on principle rather than force. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the hum of the city. Ethan looked at her, his eyes softening. "You're welcome. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine," she replied, brushing off her cloak. She didn't want to draw attention to herself, but she felt a strange desire to tell him the truth, to explain why she was here, who she really was. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. As the day went on, Leora followed Ethan more closely than ever, observing him as he went about his small acts of kindness. He helped an elderly vendor repair a broken cartwheel, guided lost children back to their homes, and even stopped to console a woman who had dropped her meager earnings in the mud. All of it was done without expecting recognition, without hesitation, and without thought of reward. Leora felt a warmth in her chest that she could not explain. She began to realize something profound. Humans, fragile and physically weaker than her species, possessed a strength that came from their choices, the strength to act with compassion, to risk discomfort for the sake of others, to do right even when it offered no gain. In her world, power was measured in wealth and influence, in the ability to bend others to your will. Here, she saw a different kind of power, one that came from the heart. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Leora and Ethan found themselves in the central square. Children played near a fountain, vendors packed up their goods, and the streets hummed with the soft rhythm of life. A sudden commotion drew their attention. A fire had broken out in a small building, smoke billowing into the air, flames licking the walls. People screamed and ran, some trapped inside, their cries echoing through the square. Without thinking, Ethan ran toward the building. Leora hesitated, torn between her instinct to hide and a sudden surge of courage. She followed him, slipping through the crowd, her heart racing. Inside, the fire was fierce and the heat was nearly unbearable. Ethan shouted instructions to the trapped people, guiding them toward exits and carrying those who could not move on their own. Leora watched him in awe. He did not panic. He did not hesitate. Every action was deliberate, every choice made with care for others. Seeing him risk his life for strangers, she realized that kindness could demand courage, and courage could be measured not by strength or weapons, but by the willingness to act when it mattered most. When the fire was finally under control, and the last of the trapped residents were safe, Ethan emerged, soot-streaked and exhausted, yet smiling faintly. Leora, hiding behind a pillar, felt a mixture of relief and admiration. She had seen humans act bravely in stories and history, but seeing it with her own eyes changed everything. This was real. This was genuine. That night, Leora returned to her mansion, soaked in sweat and mud, her cloak torn in places. She sat by her window looking out at the city that had once seemed so cruel and indifferent. Now, after watching Ethan, she understood something she had never known. The true measure of a being was not in what they owned, but in what they chose to give. She resolved that she could not stay hidden forever. Ethan deserved to know the truth. But how could she reveal herself without destroying the honesty they had found together? And more importantly, could she trust that kindness she had witnessed in the streets would extend to her once she removed the mask? The next morning, Leora returned to the streets, this time with a purpose beyond observation. She sought Ethan, finding him helping repair a collapsed bridge in a poorer district. He looked up as she approached, a faint smile on his face. "You're back," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Are you okay?" "Yes," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I wanted to. Thank you for everything, and I want to show you who I really am." Ethan raised an eyebrow, curious but not alarmed. "Who you really are." Slowly, Leora removed her hood, revealing the glow of her alien features. Her eyes, silver and radiant, met his gaze. The cloak fell to the ground, torn and dirty, but her presence was undeniable. She held her breath, waiting for his reaction. Ethan stared for a long moment. Then slowly a smile spread across his face, not of surprise, but of understanding. "I see," he said simply. "So all this time you were testing me?" Yes," Leora admitted. "I wanted to know if someone could see me for who I truly am, not for my family, my wealth, or my status." "And you showed me something I never knew existed." Ethan stepped closer. "It wasn't a test," he said. "I treated you the way I would treat anyone in need. You didn't need to be rich or powerful. You needed help and I helped. That's all." Leora felt a rush of emotion she had never experienced before. Gratitude, yes, but something deeper. A connection that had nothing to do with her status or influence, but with the choices she had made and the honesty she had witnessed. Their bond grew quickly in the following days. Leora began accompanying Ethan in his daily acts of kindness, learning more about the human approach to empathy and courage. She saw how he negotiated disputes without violence, how he offered guidance to those struggling, and how he inspired respect without demanding it. Yet, their growing connection did not go unnoticed. Members of Leora's family, concerned about her absence and the rumors spreading about her wandering the city in disguise, began sending emissaries to bring her back. Some attempted to threaten Ethan, warning him to stay away from the alien elite, but he remained steadfast. He refused to leave Leora or compromise his principles, even when faced with potential danger. One evening, as the sun set behind the violet towers, Leora and Ethan walked through the quieter streets of the city. The air calm after a long day of helping others. She looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting both the fading light and the warmth she felt inside. "Ethan," she said softly, "I've seen so much because of you. I've seen kindness I never knew existed. And I've learned something important. That strength isn't in what you have or how powerful you are. It's in what you choose to do for others." He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "And I've learned that sometimes courage comes from simply being true to yourself. You've shown me that even someone like you, someone who could have anything, can choose to care for the world honestly." For the first time, Leora felt fully understood, not as a wealthy alien girl, but as a being capable of compassion, courage, and love. She knew the journey ahead would not be simple. Her family would not easily accept her choices. There would be challenges, decisions that tested her loyalty, and threats from those who valued power above all else. But for now, as they walked side by side, she felt hope. Hope that two worlds, so different in so many ways, could find understanding through acts of kindness. Hope that a single human, small and fragile in the eyes of her people, could teach her lessons her wealth never could. And hope that the bond they had formed, based on honesty, courage, and care, would continue to grow, bridging the gap between species, cultures, and hearts. As night fell over Virelia, the city lights shimmered like distant stars. Leora and Ethan continued walking, helping where they could, speaking when needed, and learning from each other. The world was vast and often harsh, but in their connection, they found something rare: genuine kindness, bravery born of choice, and a bond that no wealth or status could ever create. And Leora knew, deep within her heart, that this was